Going to... Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm so happy to have Codi Hamblin with us today. She's owner of Aligned Equine Bodywork. She is a certified equine natural movement school teacher and a licensed large animal massage therapist in Washington State. I hope I got all of that clear and right. But she studied with Joseph and Jacqueline Freeman, who many of you may know, and she is a Reiki master. I'm really excited to have her here as we dive into the wild and wonderful world of animals. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So I read a little in your bio. I got a sneak peek from your website, but I would love to know where your passion started with horses and animals.
Yeah. So horses have always been a part of my life ever since probably for most horse people since they could talk, and my parents were like, we don't know where this came from. My family didn't have horses. I guess I was born with a natural love and affinity for them. So growing up, I grew up with the horses, and then all through my youth, and then late teens, early 20s, sort of pivoted when, you're asked that big question of like, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? And it's just pretty daunting at that age. So I feel like I've had, several careers and interests prior to embarking on structural integration with horses, all of which I was thinking this morning kind of about this story, and all of which is like being in service to nature and earth. And it's looked in different ways. So I don't know if you ever take a break from horses, but I didn't like have my own, or wasn't at a boarding facility. And so pursuing undergrad and graduate school in environmental journalism and news reporting. And then that eventually shifted into environmental education in the nonprofit world. I did that for 10 years, but then was also kind of getting these, like I found myself, it really all started in a Reiki class, and that like, I don't know what Reiki is and why I'm here and what is energy, but okay, so let's try this and see. And that is when I feel like things really unfold, like the journey really unfolded with horses and body work. And so I was kind of exploring the healing arts, and then also started getting my own structural integration series. And I don't even know how that started. I couldn't tell you. I don't know. Next thing I know, I'm like on the table with I'm still seeing this person today, 10 years later. But anyway, so there's this like weaving together. And then I brought I got a horse as an adult, and that was a huge learning curve. And he was a huge teacher. I guess I'm getting my order mixed up. He was first. My Palomino horse was first. Then it was Reiki. Then it was structural integration for myself. And I've kind of juggling these different, and then my day job, or, the job that I really, really loved, I thought I was going to be there forever. It's a great organization. And love that work. But then it's like I literally was like a tap on the shoulder at work, doing my desk job. And then it was like body work. And I was like, huh? So I started looking for people. And so I'm not trained with people. I've never, like, I guess other than Reiki. But yeah, it was just like a tap on the shoulder. And it's one of those like pulls that you try to ignore it. And you're like, I don't know about that. But the next thing I know, long story short, I'm Googling, and literally the only school that came up there's several schools in Washington State, but the only one, I kid you not, that came up on that Google search was Equine Natural Movement School. And it just pulled me again. So it's like following the breadcrumbs and saying yes, and being open to the mystery of what's about to unfold. But I still, even when I was in school, I'm like laughing that I'm teaching now, because in school I was so like scared and like, again, what am I doing here? It's like the Reiki class, like, oh, okay, I guess But I remember the first in our module 1, and Joseph was like, okay, like, let's go practice your strokes. And it was me and one other student at that time. And we were both just like, I probably like eyes wide and just like, do what with a horse? So anyway, come a long way since then. But anyway, that's kind of it was a winding path to get here. But and I still hold the, open to what's next, what can and I'm like every day I'm like, okay, so where are we going?
Yeah.
What's the next step and how is this going to unfold? So
Do you
yeah.
think when you got your own horse, that was kind of like they opened you up to like showing up at the Reiki class, which opened you up to just being on the table receiving work? What was your relationship with your horse like? Your first horse that was your own, or you shared?
100%. Yeah, he was like my first horse. I had several horses growing up, but he was like the first horse as an adult, after taking that break, and so much has changed and being out of that world. And I think all horses are master teachers, but he was like my master teacher for that chapter. And probably get emotional about it, but he he also was a horse that was like, I grew up with him, like my dad had him, and he was a horse when I could pick any horse in the world, he was like on my mind. And so I was like, Dad, I want Cajun. Can I have Cajun? Because he was kind of a pasture pet at that time with my dad. And so I brought him into my family. And he was a horse who was like, everything you know about horses up to this point doesn't work for me. So it touches your heart. So that was a journey in itself. I was scared of him. He charged me. I mean, like these things that I've never had. Like when I was doing work on the ground with him, he would get so overloaded and stressed that he would like come like charging at you. Not a good stress response. So I'm like dumbfounded, stuck, don't know what to do. And I'm like, I thought I knew about horses. So I started bringing in, just asking the questions of like, what don't I know? I don't know a lot with this horse. So started bringing in a team of people to help me, which included a couple of body workers. So that also planted the seed of like, oh, that's a thing. So, and then there was a trainer in particular, named Matney Cook here in Washington State, who she's actually like a horse human marriage counselor is what I feel like, because it was about me and how I showed up, not him. So he was just mirroring and responding to how I was presenting. And at the time, energetically, it wasn't a match. And so she beautifully helped me kind of unravel where she just helped me like start from ground zero and just rebuild how I thought about horses, how to be with them, just to be with them, how to soften, it was just such a game changer. So he started that journey. And then I fully credit him with getting me on this path for body work, because when I fully stepped into it as a full-time career was in 2020, is when my day job at the nonprofit became my side job. And then oddly enough, the side job became the full-time job. And I just made the leap, which was, exciting and terrifying at the same time. And once I fully committed to that, he passed.
Wow.
So that's where I'm like, okay. And then the next master teacher came in, and that's who I have in my family now.
Mm-hmm.
But so yes.
That's so beautiful and so loving, that gift. Yeah, when you're working with horses now versus that first day with wide eyes, um, where do you feel like your growths have been? Where have been like your peaks, and where have been your, oh my gosh, what's going on moments? Do you have any standout memories that you would want to share?
Oh, every day. I feel like every day with the horses is like, oh my gosh. And that's not like an exaggeration. I feel like every horse, every session, even when I'm taking a horse through a series, right? And those horses you have those relationships with, I treat, and I'm sure it's similar with people, but it's like every day is a new session, new being with you under your hands. Um, this has just been a fun, wild ride. Really hit that has so Cajun planted the seed that I didn't know I was going to go on about how to see the world in different. I mean, it's just like an unraveling and an unlearning of how myself, and I think many of us were raised to navigate the world. Just thinking about all animals, all of nature differently. I mean, even when I was back teaching environmental education, you know, we weren't talking about like the spirit of things. It was very I don't know, that essence wasn't in it, but that started to naturally grow in me. But anyway, bringing back to your question, I feel like I've come a really long ways from being like afraid and nerd and like, I'm going to get the strokes wrong and what, to more of like a fluidity, and I can connect with and tap in with the rhythm of the horse. Although some days are easier than others. Not gonna lie. You can have a lot of distractions in the barn, and you know, things change day to day scheduling. It's a very busy environment. But I would say for me, the energy work has been something that has just really changed the way how I navigate the world, see the world, think about the world, both with horses, the body work, and then extrapolating that out to the world as a whole. That has been my biggest growth aspect. And then, you know, with friends and colleagues were to ask me like, what's your strength and what's your weakness? I would say, even though the energy part has been the part that I've grown the most exponentially, that's what I take most naturally to. And then I'd have to admit, as a practitioner, that the actual structure of the body, the anatomy, physiology, I have to constantly work at that and how things are putting together. But to see the body energetically is becoming, again, learning every day, being shown different things, but that is the part I feel like I've come the most far with.
What would you say would be some of the differences you noticed perceiving energetically with people versus perceiving energetically like with a horse? Does that make sense?
So like, what do I see that differently?
Sure.
I think, can you repeat that?
So I know you primarily probably tap in to working with Reiki and working energetically when you're working with the horse. Is there an aspect where you're also working energetically with I feel weird saying owner, but because I feel like it's such a like the being coming together, but their person maybe.
Yeah, no, guardian is another term.
Guardian. Yeah, I like that.
Guardian or steward. I feel you on the owner.
There's a beautiful word. I think it was something with a K, but it's a Hawaiian word, which means like protector or steward. I'll have to look that up. But yeah, I don't know if working energetically or working with the steward or the protector of the horse is a part of your practice, but I was curious if, you know, the energetics feel or look differently with the horse versus with a person. I don't know if you have that in your experience, but
well, for me personally, I guess when I feel into that question, what comes up is, even though we're working with the horses and the human client guardian is, they're the ones calling us in to work with their horse. I feel it personally in my practice, many of the humans are involved. So even though I'm not doing body work, I don't do energy work with the people. I relationships are probably one of they are one of the core values of me as a practitioner in my business. And so I deeply value, strong relationships, heart-centered relationships with the horses and also the people. So the people are I love the people just as much as I love the horses. And so with that, what comes up for me is when I'm in sessions, and oftentimes everybody works differently, but a lot of times when people are present for the sessions, they talk, they ask questions. I'll share, I call it bringing them along with the session and sharing what I'm finding. And it's not all gabbing. There's moments of quiet, there's this flow, but I've had experiences where, it ripples out, the energy ripples out even to the other horses, where you look around and the other horses who aren't, it's not their session, but they're all connected as a herd. And you look down the barn aisle and you're like, okay, everybody's tapped into this. That happens too with the people. I find I end up holding space for the horses, but also for the people too. And they'll have experiences come up, or there's they'll see their horse. I don't know if I'm answering exactly how you were, thinking with the question, but it's like there's so much more that unfolds besides bringing a physical alignment to the body of the horse. It's like it's a greater energetic connection that happens. I feel like the people, when they're present at the session, can see their horse in a different way. And so I think there are ways that the relationship between the horse and that person can shift. And then what comes up and what is shared sometimes with clients, or from clients to me with sessions. And so holding space for that. And so it's so much for me in my experience, it's so much more than just body work in this process. So I'm not looking into the energy of the person as I am with the horse in the sessions, but it's all connected. And that was one of my biggest learnings when I was starting out and really kind of getting a flow in this work, of just how the interconnection of species, both the same species and interspecies. I even pay attention to the birds who come in the barn, the dogs, there's often dogs at the barn, and suddenly they're curled up behind you, tapping in, and the barn cats, it's really interesting what unfolds, and not every session's this way, but those have been some hallmarks in my learning and some of my favorite moments in the work too.
Wow, I love that so much. Feeling that inner connectedness during a session, and especially thinking with the idea of herd animals. I used to work briefly on an alpaca farm, and I thought it was really interesting to witness some of the dynamics and different personalities, but the overall energy and how that working together, or everyone kind of has a job in the beehive kind of thing. And I'm curious, I'm getting to the question. I'm curious, after doing so much of this work and holding kind of this space and being present with this interconnectedness, did it change, or how did it change your interactions in your day-to-day out in the world?
Yeah, I feel like sometimes I feel like the weirdo where I'm like, did anyone else see that? Anyone else notice that? No? Okay.
Uh-huh.
And that actually, something else that kind of popped into mind with that is, well, I'll finish this thought too. It's, it's amazing what you see when you're quiet, present. I'm focused on, I call it the active conversation, is when I have the horse in front of me, my hands are on the horse's body, and I'm listening with my hands and listening with the energy. And then there's a peripheral vision to see, there's a safety piece. What's the horse doing on the hind end? Is there a foot coming? Is there a head coming with teeth, right? There's some of those practical pieces. And then also, did that swish of the tail, was that a relaxed swish? Or it was a deep listening? It's like, is there a relaxed swish, or was that like a, hey, was that a warning? Are their eyes soft? Are their lips twitching? There's body language, and then there's what's going on in the barn around you. Again, that practicality, like staying safe. Is someone coming with the wheelbarrow and the horse, it's going to pull the horse out of this session? Or so there's this deep listening. And then I found, I don't think I've actually shared this before. I found, like, when the sunlight is hitting the hair on the horse, as I'm working and I'm like deep in that moment, and there's like little rainbows off, reflecting off the hair. Or sometimes, like, I'll be looking on the ground, but I'm pausing, listening, doing, releasing, holding, and there's like a little caterpillar on the, it's just like those minute details that if I were just walking in the day-to-day, I would maybe miss. But so I feel like this work has, taught me to see the minutia in the mundane, or in the day-to-day, and in the bigger picture. But on the flip side of that, what I didn't realize was all of my training and schooling and environmental education. So I spent 1 full year, and then off and on, I had an office job doing more of like the back end programming for the schools, but would get called in to teach. And anyway, so my time teaching people how to look at the minutia, or the tiny pieces of the natural world in nature. So that training in natural history and observation, I didn't realize it would be a direct transfer to the work with horses and body work. So I credit my training in environmental education to set me up more, like, to see that more quickly. But then I credit my work with the horses and body work, instructional integration, to just deepen that.
Mm-hmm.
So I've gotten good at multitasking energetically, I guess.
Yeah, there's a lot to hold there that you're speaking about. And with your hands-on work, and perhaps also intertwining energetic, have you felt like you're learning different communication with, like, the organs and the tissues, and are they speaking back to you? Like, what have been some of your aha moments, like, within the structure?
Yeah, that is something I am currently exploring more, and building my, like, learning how to more clearly hear. I think right now it's more of the intuitive feels, or the inner knowing. So I've done a little bit of work in training and working with the organs. I'm trying to think if I've had like a real aha moment. I know I have. It's just like, it's more, I think where I'm at is, it's so funny. Someday I'll, like, it's like, I'm always surprised when it happens. Like, when I have a hunch, or that inner knowing, and then I'm like, okay, and then I'm, gotta work to release this with the body, and which way does it want to go, and what is it? And then when it, like, shifts, and then the horse has a response, every time I'm still like, oh my gosh, it works.
It's magic.
It's magic. It's funny. It's like, there's this, the inner knower in me knows it's real and it's working, and then it's still this heady. I'm a very analytical, I can be a very analytical person, and so there's still like, come on, mind. Step aside.
Come join the party down in here.
Exactly. So I'm having trouble an exact story isn't coming to mind, but it's like, and it's more so, I think in the last year, I've been having more and more of this openness to not just releasing fascial holdings, but like releasing fascial holdings, like you're saying, in the organs, deeper in the body, in the dura. I've started last year, actually just this summer, I wrapped up studying equine visionary craniosacral therapy with Tracy Vroom. And so that coupled with structural integration and the beautiful work I have learned and continue to learn from Joseph, they blend really well together. So I think that's been more of where, as I start playing with the cranial, but as I'm exploring with the cranial, I'm not experimenting on your horses, but I am learning every day. It's that, like, for me, it's that deep listening. Here's what it is. It's that deep listening. You get that ping for go here, try this. It's like I'm shown a suggestion of what to do, whether that's a cranial contact, structural integration, stroke, energetic release. And then I go into that and then keep asking the question of what wants to happen. Is this physical? Is this emotional? That's the part that still is like, whoa, that's so cool. Or even when the horse shows me in my mind's eye, like what the holding is, the size, the weight, the color, the direction, it never gets old. Mm-hmm. So I'm an exact story isn't coming up, but the whole experience, that's like where I am at, like in this moment as a practitioner, as I feel like I'm on this, like an upward, like something is brewing. A deeper learning for me, and my journey with the horses is brewing. And so I'm holding that curiosity and excitement. And also, this is just my personal work of like, okay. Anybody else?
Anybody see that? Just me? Okay.
Yeah. So it's not true. I have a great, community of people, but sometimes it does feel like it's just me. All right.
I had a question and I lost it. I was so enveloped in your story. Yeah, I was wanting to circle back to your training and ask you, what was it like when you were learning, and how was that in relationship to the work that you received? Did that like inform you? How did you feel like it was similar or different, like receiving the work versus giving the work with horses? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it is. So I was getting my series before I started school. I would have signed up to go to training for structural integration because something else would have like dropped in, and right, something else would have pinged me. But when I heard a structural integration for horses, I was like 100%. Like, it helped me get it, because what I was experiencing in my body, the results I was experiencing were phenomenal. And I love a good massage. I also really love a good structural session that really helps bring lasting changes to my body. So that helped me make the connection almost immediately, even though I was like timid to do the strokes. It really helped with that. And I appreciate that that's one of the assignments for students in the program, is to receive a full series themselves. And so I've also studied and become certified in acupressure And
Oh.
so, for horses. And so as I signed up for that, that was another pull, to study. I've started receiving acupuncture myself, so I can, for similar reasons. So anything I study for horses, I want to get done for myself. So I can, even though I'm not a horse, there's got to be some similarities, and so it helps give me compassion for where the horse might be, and like, those difficult releases, or where they might be feeling in their body. And so, those more challenging work, that's like, hey, I know this is hard. Can we breathe through this? Here's what here's the end goal. And also, like, yeah, I've had my ribs my ribs work through too, man, I know. And I'll be as gentle as possible. And the same with cranio, so getting that done with myself. And then I feel like it just helps me have an idea, and potentially not one for one translate, but have an idea of what that might be for the horse. And then also be able to communicate that when to their person when they're present. It's really common for horses to get nervous and unsure in this work. So we all love, and we, as practitioners, we all love to post on our social media those very Zen-like sessions where the horse is like drooling and their eyes are closed. It's very, very calm and serene. That's the end goal. But the reality is that for some horses, it's really hard. And it's, as prey animals, in the wild, anyway, I think this is similar for deer and elk and other similar four-legged prey animals in the wild. But if you show a weakness, if you're left behind, you're the one that's going to, theoretically get picked off by the predators. And so if you can hide those compensations and hide those weak spots, you're good. So we as practitioners go in and we're like, oh, hey, what's this? And they're like, nothing to see here. And especially depending on where you're at in the series and where you are in that rapport building with the horse, at some point they often make the connection that you're helping them, and they'll let their guard down more. But sometimes they don't, and especially in the beginning, so they can get fidgety, they can paw, they can, really common one is they want to chew on the lead rope. And their people can oftentimes, I've joked about, like, I need a shirt that says my horse usually never does this, because that's a quote I hear often, is like, they normally don't do that. And they want their horse to be well behaved, and so I can have that conversation of like, hey, here's actually why I think here's what's going on and why they're nervous, and I'm finding their secret spots and they're in a vulnerable position. And one of my favorite ones is when things start unraveling in the body, and the horse, reaches around, has got to get an itch, or, and it's like, oh, in my own body, in my own sessions, my practitioner's working on my left shoulder and I get zingers in my right foot, or I can, feel those sensations elsewhere in my body. So I feel like it's helped me to be able to understand the work better, of course, and then that compassionate piece and that understanding to be able to translate with the people of what might be going on.
Yeah. So this might be coming from a place of ignorance, but I'm kind of curious, like, as far as like with the trust building and like creating an atmosphere of safety. I feel like there's like that compassionate and healing piece. And maybe it's like, I think Joseph talked about, like, if you find that vulnerable spot, maybe you don't work there first and you work somewhere else. But as far as like, is there an aspect of like, you have to show an aspect of like leadership or awareness, or is there certain aspects like of a certain like herd mentality of how do you fit in to the pack to establish that trust? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Um, I feel for me, oftentimes in the horse world, there is like you have to be the leader or the boss or and I see it more as when I'm in a horse's space, my my goal is to show that I'm safe and that I'm safe, I'm not a threat. And to be in an energetic state where they allow you to be in their space, if that makes sense. So, and then there are little snippets of like that. No, actually what I'm trying to get back to, that connection and that like being safe. There is like knowing a lot of knowing about the body language of the horse, but one of the things that's coming to mind is like if the hay truck comes in or manure truck, if there's something that comes in that kind of like alerts the horse, and if I ignore that in a session, suddenly I'm not safe. They're like, you didn't see that? How did you miss that? What? So that's kind of that multitasking I was talking about earlier, where the active conversation of all of those pieces, the periphery with the tissue under your hands, but then and then the barn environment. And so if I see a horse kind of pick their head up, I can keep my hands on the horse, but also take a look and be like, oh yeah. And like, oh, yep, I see the truck. We're good. And it can just be that. And they're like, oh, okay, you're watching. So if you're watching, then I can relax into what's going on. So it's little pieces like that add up to help them feel safe. Even to adjusting. Occasionally I'm in a session where it's like, well, we'll start out in the arena and then we're okay. But then suddenly, that environment for some reason has changed comfort wise. So then we'll go into the stall and maybe the horse feels better there, or elsewhere. You start in the stall, but maybe you need to be in cross type. There's an adjustment. So it's always reading, how can I help this horse feel safe and under threshold so that we can work together to accomplish the session.
Mm-hmm.
And that's different every day with different horses and different barn environments. And so is that kind of what you're
yeah it's always the answer that's meant to happen.
Yeah. Well, just making sure I'm on track. I'm really good about going on to right or left field.
I love everything you're sharing. This is so interesting and for me heartwarming.
It's hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious because there is like a series that's different from the structural integration series, like that's shorter. But I'm curious, do you always follow the series, or are there times where you divulge from that? Do you see it as kind of like a framework, or do you see it as like, oh, I think I like staying in this and having different things emerge? What's your relationship with the series?
Yeah. That's a really good question. The structural integration series I keep as, the more I do this, it's a foundation or framework. It's more of like a framework, I think. And structural integration is the foundation of what I do. It's where I intend to start, but then I have what the horse needs that day. And then I have these other, I have acupressure and cranial sacral Reiki, and it's all melded together. An example I have more recently is there were two horses with the same person, and the first horse, really, I started out with like a structural integration intention, and the horse was just like, nope, I can't do it. And so I pivoted to a more, and I think it all relates to each other. But I went to a more cranial approach, and much like very, very soft, very almost not off body, but a more gentle, energetic space for that horse. And then he was like, oh, thank you, and could just like drop into that space. And so we went with that, right? So again, it's that deep listening, and what does the body need today? What tools and skills do I have to offer? And then I ask where the body wants to go, and then I listen and I go that way. What cracked me up that day, it cracked me up. I'm like, this is so fascinating. So worked with that horse, put him back out, brought his pasture mate in, and she was like, structural all the way, please, 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 please. Even to the like I don't work very, I work deep, but I work very softly, and but I was like, leaning in. I'm like, are you sure about this? Are you sure? I'm like, okay, wow. And if I went the other direction, what I had done with her pasture mate, she was like, oh my gosh, please stop. This is weird. But the deeper I went and I followed the more, the more of the framework of the structural integration, she was like, oh, thank you. And then she dropped in. And so that was really fun. That was like, back-to-back sessions, totally different. So I think I do still offer series, but they look very different than when I was first out of school and sticking more to the textbook. Now it's more of like what I was saying of like, what do you need today and what can I offer you, and then asking the body where they want to start, and listening to where, sternum, pelvis, going to bouncing back between around and like going where I'm guided, and where I get the pings. So
yeah,
it's never boring, that's for sure.
Yeah. Boring. Never the same.
No, bodies are fascinating.
So oftentimes, and I've heard this from other practitioners, where there'll be waves of times where you're like, everybody has like a rib thing going on, or you, they say like you attract the people or the horses that you are either meant to work on, or that challenge you in some way to know that that's not where you're going. Do you have any patterns that you've noticed, or any like personalities or types of injuries or types of horses that get drawn to you?
It all depends on the week, month, time of year, but it's so helpful to hear it's not just me.
Just me? No.
Totally. Yeah. Like, there are some weeks it's like, am I just seeing, imbalances in the pelvic region because I saw that 3 times prior? No, it's that's the theme for the week. I'm learning to trust that more, but it's fascinating.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is what I'm meant to learn. There's something to be learned in that experience, or the horses are teaching something about the work in that way. I have found that as my skills and confidence have broadened, the types of horses, and it's not breed specific or even discipline specific, but I mean, even the people, the human people who come in, and horses have shifted. And I don't know if it was just a learning curve, and it still is a learning curve on the journey of how that works, of how, as you change as a practitioner, so will the type of people who are, and horses, to me, they go together, but who are drawn and called to work with you. And it's not forever, right? Like they come in to teach me, I come in to teach them something. Sometimes it serves its purpose briefly and it moves on. Others are longer than others, but another fascinating process of the work, and having this business too. A friend, I'm sure I'm not the only, I know I'm not the only one who considers a business to be a spiritual practice, but that's something that the more I've gotten into this, well, even when I just started, it was like, something that's so cool about this work. This is the first job I've had that all 100% of me can be present, both in the practical, like day-to-day work pieces of having a business, but then also the body work and the spiritual side. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can just be me at my job. Wow. It's amazing. Before it was kind of like, well, these are my professional skills, and then, you know, my spiritual and cosmological questioning is back here. And it's just so amazing, and I feel so grateful to be able to, and it involves animals. Well, horses, but I mean, I love, you know, animals, but nature, and it's all connected. It's so cool.
How can it get any better?
Oh my gosh, yes. And then even the part that I do appreciate that it's like is like the shadow work aspect of like, there are things about myself and that business just knows how to bring out of you that I did not know was there. You know, at my other job, it's like I didn't have to look at that. And then so it's fascinating to see so even that, I even appreciate that part. Remind me that I appreciate that the next time something wants to be looked at. But no, it's just like it's full body, mind, body, spirit work. And it's I feel so fortunate to be able to do it.
Yeah. I feel like that's just like the perfect note to conclude on. Present, interconnectedness, love, full-bodied, everything. Oh, thank you so much. This has just been a joy talking with you and learning from you, and I'm so excited to share this with our community. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, likewise. Thank you so much. It's fun to talk about and share, and so happy to have the conversation.